dedicate this. We started a few months ago. What happened was Katie Stewart of the Transgender Education Network of Texas, and she's going to come up and speak to you later. She had this idea of dedicating and making a living memorial in all of the major cities in Texas. And since we already had this amazing monstrous Remembrance Garden, I asked the guys if we could do this, because when they dedicated this 4 years ago, I think it was 4 years ago, 11, yeah, something like that. After Aaron Sherhone was murdered here, just a few blocks from here, they told me about the number of transgender names that they read in. So I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to expand on the garden and to allow our thing to be here with them. So they agreed graciously. This is a mock, which takes a long time for them to create a granite rock like that. So that is coming. But Alan over here has been incredibly helpful, and we're very honored that we're able to do this. There is another ceremony on Saturday night, and when Monique comes up, hopefully she will tell you about that as well. But I really want to say thank you for remembering all the people. This is International Transgender Day of Remembrance, and honoring those that have lost their lives due to bias against the way that somebody's living authentically. Now, much to my surprise, Senator John Whitmire has graciously been shown up here tonight. So, sir, would you please come and address the crowd? I'd really appreciate it.
Woo! I hope it's not too big a surprise. Yeah. I have been here before, and unfortunately, I wish we didn't have to have a spot such as this. And hopefully someday we'll be able to live in a world that we don't recognize people that have been discriminated against, victimized. But it is the world that we find ourselves living in. I wish you could pass legislation that would be proactive and prevent acts of crime against our community, but I work in Austin in a world that is, I guess I should say, ignorant to a lot of our lifestyles and choices. And until we succeed in educating our community, the Houston, Harris County, and statewide, we're going to find ourselves having these conversations. So I would like to offer myself as someone that will spread the word that the solution to so much of our problems is tolerance, tolerance, tolerance. And we have a lot of work cut out. I will close by saying, because how I get to be a voice, and others, such as our mayor and so many of our friends, is elections matter. And we have to definitely put a face on why elections matter. Not only that we find ourselves here tonight honoring the fallen, but as I see my friend Constable Rosen, he understands elections matter. And it's great to have police officers and law enforcement leaders such as him that are training his officers to be respectful of gender expression and all the things that we stand for. So I'm proud to be here. It's my second time to be here when we dedicated the memorial. And like I said, I hope if we don't, certainly we've got to strive for our children and grandchildren to live in a world where we do not have services such as this. And we're making headway. We're making headway. I'm the first to admit I've worked very close with the gay and lesbian community my complete political career, with the transgender community. I've got a lot to learn myself. And if you'll help me, I will become a more effective spokesman to understand some of the prejudices and biases that you encounter, whether it be in the workplace, law enforcement, or maybe your next door neighbor. So with that, thank you for allowing me to play a small role.
Thank you, Senator Wilson. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Noel Freeman, president of the GLBT Political Caucus. In case you guys are not on Facebook and didn't hear, Mayor Parker did say that same-sex marriages that have taken place in other states are now legal here in this fine city of ours.
Yeah.
Mr. Freeman and his husband, Brad, where did you go? Raise your hand. What did you do, run away? Oh, there he is, right here. They were the first ones to sign up for their benefit because Noel does work for the city of Houston. So thank you for all your work. Thank you for being here. And it's your floor now, sir.
You know, I ended up being kind of an accidental activist when I got discharged under Darnast Hotel, and I never thought that I would be immersed in politics. And, you know, when I first came out and started getting involved in issues, I only saw the gay and lesbian side of things, and I didn't know anything about transgender issues at all. And one of the first people I met in Houston when I moved to Houston was Phyllis Fry, and she taught me so much. And I've been able to meet, other wonderful people in the community, Katie, Lou, Jennifer, so many others, who will tell you that if there was an issue that I needed to understand, I would call them up and say, teach me, educate me. I need to know what this issue is about. And I like to think that I know a lot more about transgender issues than I did those years ago, but I still have so much more to learn. And one of the things that I learned from attending my very first Transgender Day of Remembrance, when there were so many names that were read, and there were so many names, is that the trans community continues to be so disproportionately affected by hate and violence. And it's my hope that as we continue, even though we come together for a very unfortunate reason, that we have the opportunity to raise awareness to the hate and the violence that is so disproportionately directed at the trans community, that we can change our world. And every year when we come together, there are fewer and fewer and fewer names that have to be read, and that maybe someday we can get to that point where we're not reading names. And so thank you, Lou, for inviting me to be here. And I will continue to learn, and I will continue to be here, and we can all make that difference. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Noel. Monique Starr. Monique is the current president for the Transgender Foundation of America. For those of you who don't know, we are very fortunate and lucky to have our very own Transgender Center just blocked right up there. Monique is also hopefully going to tell us a little bit about Saturday's night's event, which is the actual memorial where we will be reading names. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Lou. Hi, I'm Monique, and I'm in charge of this year's DOR for HTUC for TFA, and that's a lot of alphabet soup. TFA is the Transgender Foundation of America, and we operate that Transgender Center over there at 604 Pacific. And Houston is unique that it has a permanent transgender facility center like that. We're the only city in the country, not New York, not San Francisco, Houston, Texas. And that's a result of all that activism that Senator Whitmire was talking about with Phyllis and all of the ones who've gone before me to make that all very possible. I am an accidental activist. Lou recruited me to be on the board because he thought I might be useful. And apparently I was too useful for my own good. Day of Remembrance that HTUC sponsors and hosts every year. This year is 7 o'clock at the A.D. Bruce Religion Center on the U of H campus, main campus. I invite everyone here to attend. At 7, there'll be a social hour where we'll kind of ease into it. And then at 8 o'clock, we start with the presentations, the speakers, and then the reading of the names. The reading of the names is pretty powerful. I spent the last 3 months building a book, and it has 141 names this year. Last year we had 183, so we're down by 42. We gather from the same places, we work really hard. I know the book is incomplete, I know the book is incorrect, but it's the best we can do with what we have. Every year, that event sends people home going, oh my gosh, I never knew this happened to people, not in this day and age, And it does, and that's just part of it. I don't like to think of it as a day about hatred. I like to think of it as a day about courage. About the courage that those people had to live their lives. So I don't talk much. Live their lives authentically and truly and really. And I look at this memorial as a presence like I would my mother's tombstone. A place that I go back to connect to her. I think as human beings, we find comfort in a permanent physical thing, something we can come to, we can touch, and it brings us comfort. And so I really appreciate Katie putting this together for us to have a refuge and a touchstone. So thank you very much. Please come on Saturday. I'll try not to cry.
I also want to recognize HRC Houston. HRC Houston is really incredible. They're kind of a different thing with HRC because we have a strong relationship with them here. They're sponsoring a reception after the Memorial Saturday, so if it's too much, you don't have someplace to go afterwards, you want to kind of sit around, hang out with people that have gone through the same thing. We've put together with them, we've worked with them, I am on the steering committee, to have kind of an after reception this Saturday after it. But I'd like to invite Ian Barrett up here to say a few words about HRC's involvement with our transgender community here. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Lou. So the common theme of many of the speakers is that Lou recruited you to do something, which is the way that I'm here as well tonight. And so I'm really honored to be here, and I'm really encouraged by the size of the crowd. And so tonight, my comments I'd like to center on the very first transgender person that I met. When I'm not doing HRC work or being a mini activist, I'm a human resources professional. And I worked for a hospital in Cincinnati, and shortly after I got there, one of the employees who reported to me made a request of my boss and also of me to begin the transition process at work. And so I'd been in HR for a long time, but I'd never had a person come to me with this request before. And so the organization, which was a children's hospital, was really great, and senior management was very supportive of Roberta transitioning at work. Roberta is a veteran. She is a father, and she was a security officer, and her job was to protect visiting nurses as they went to people's homes as we provided care to patients. And oftentimes in going to those homes, some of those places that we weren't always the safest. And not only did the children have fragile medical conditions, but there were other things going on in the home. And so Roberta had a really tough job to make sure that all of her nurses were safe. And through the transition process, I learned a lot. I was encouraged and moved by her courage, how dedicated she was to her profession, and how she dealt with the challenges of transitioning at work in an effective way. And I drew strength from that, and I learned so much from Roberta, and that sort of has propelled me and moved with me as I've done my work with HRC. The workplace is important for HRC because we know that we all want to make a living, we all want to have a career, we all want to have benefits, we all want to be able to take care of our families. And so we want to be protected, that's right. And so that certainly is one of the agenda items that we have at HRC. And so in closing, go talk to your HR person at work. We're really here to help. We can help you with things as you navigate along the way. And thank you so much for being here. And with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Ian. Appreciate you. And like everybody's kind of mentioned, we're talking about advocates and activists here. One of my personal favorites of an advocate, one of the biggest, as he refers to himself, sissy advocates for us, referring to cisgender people. Friend and colleague Daniel Williams from Equality, Texas.
Thank you. I wanted to thank Lou for inviting me to speak today, as well as the Aaron Scherhorn Foundation and the Transgender Education Network of Texas. I got to thinking about the idea of a living memorial and what that means. And if I could brag on Katie and Tint for just a moment. Dean Whitmire spoke earlier about the intolerance and the ignorance in the Texas legislature. This last spring, Tint held their first ever lobby day at the Texas Capitol. And they had several dozen activists, some seasoned, some had never set foot in the Capitol or done a political thing in their life before. And we took one day and we took over the Capitol, and Equality Texas was very, very proud to support Tint in that effort. But this was a group of people who went down the halls of power, spoke to the people who get to make the decisions that affect our lives, and said, I am here, I am transgender, or I care about people who are, my issues matter, and you will listen to me. And to me, that's a living memorial. I had the honor this afternoon to help sort clothes at the clothing closet at Montrose Grace Place. And for those of you who don't know, Montrose Grace Place is a local homeless youth service organization. It's just a few blocks down that way. And you know, up to 40% of homeless youth are LGBT, and a frighteningly high number of that 40% are trans or gender variant. And there are some wonderful homeless youth services here in Houston. But one of the things I love about the work done at Montrose Grace Place is their clothing closet. They don't care whether you pick out girl clothes or boy clothes. Those kids get clothes because they need clothes, and they get to pick the ones they want. And that's a living memorial. I know a lot of you have taken a Saturday afternoon to come over to the TG Center and mow the lawn because it needed mowing. I know a lot of you have donated to H. Tuck's Peggy Rudd Scholarship to help trans scholars complete their education. I know a lot of you have stood up in community meetings and at your workplaces and, yes, in board meetings for LGBT organizations and said, where are the voices of trans people in this conversation? Are they being represented in the decisions that we are making? And that, to me, is a living memorial. This plaque is lovely, and it's a fitting tribute. But the things that all of us do every day to ensure that the trans people we know and love have a safe place, are cared about by law enforcement, are heard in the halls of the legislature or city hall or Congress, that's the living memorial that's going to see the end of hundreds of names being read every year. And so I am incredibly excited to see this plaque being placed, and Equality Texas is very proud to participate today. But I want to challenge you to be the living memorial and not just leave it here. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. I think I've heard a lot of these people say something about being an accidental advocate, accidental activist, and I see a few more of those in the crowd that haven't. Nikki Aragus is here. Mr. Ray Hill, quite the advocate for us. And somebody who was recognized by Senator Whitmire, Alan Rosen, who's a constable for District 1 here. Alan, would you raise your hand? Would you come here and say hello with me? I got to meet Alan, I think we were at a caucus meeting, and then he came to the Day of Remembrance 2 years ago, and he has followed up by being an advocate for his people, because they also, for Constable 1, they serve a lot of the mental health warrants. And he called me a month ago and said, come down to my office, let's talk. Let's make sure my officers know how to do this, and I want your help. And I want to say thank you, publicly recognize you, and if you have a few words to say, I'd give you the floor, sir.
Lou is a great leader, and all I can say from a law enforcement standpoint is that I am going to be an advocate, not only for the transgender community, but for all the community. And I can tell you I'm going to fight every day. In law enforcement, there's been a cycle, there's been a history where there hadn't been a really good understanding of the community, of the trans community, and I can assure you have one here in me. I have reached out to Lou. I have included him in crafting my policy in the office to ensure a non-discrimination policy that covers everybody, so that there's none of this stuff that goes on, and training our officers and making sure our officers know what to do and treat people with respect and dignity. And that's my promise to the community. It will always be my promise. It's not just because I've recently taken office. It's the way I was before, and it's the way I'm going to be the rest of my life. So I am with you, and I will fight for you, and I will be there for you. I just want to say one other thing real fast. while John Whitmire is the dean of the Senate, he is also that same person that fights extremely hard for everything that you're fighting for. He's an advocate, and he's somebody that has a lot of power and has a very big voice. So we really need to get him reelected during this next cycle. And so I want to give him a hand. Thank y'all very much, Lou. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan.
By the way, I'm sure all of y'all have been, but the Day of Remembrance is probably one of the most moving things that you can go and attend. It's amazing how horrible human beings can be to other human beings, and this really awakens that when you listen to some of these stories. So I encourage you to go Saturday night and be a part of it.
Thank you. All right. Katie's going to be my last speaker, but I think Glenwood Weber is over here ducking his head. Glenwood, he is the person who is in charge of all the flowers. He made it pretty. We can't see it, it's dark, but there'll be pictures later. Thank you, Glenwood, for doing that. Alan, hiding behind the camera here, the camcorder. He was the one who held mine and Katie's hands as we went every step of the way, showing us how this could be done, making sure it was easy, and huge thank you to you, Alan. Brandon, where did you go?
Back here behind me a while ago.
Brandon's over here with the other camera. He is also part of the Aaron Scherhorn Foundation. He wrote the article that was in the Outsmart magazine recently. He's doing a follow-up. Thank you, Brandon. He was the one who brought it to my attention when the first time that, hey, I didn't realize how many names for transgender identified people we would be reading. So huge thanks to all of you for the Aaron Scherhorn Foundation for helping to make this possible, and everybody that donated money, time, effort to bring this to reality. Katie Stewart, thank you for driving all the way from College Station to hang out with us. The grass is yours, my friend.
Thank you. So, I've got some unscripted and some scripted words. To start off the unscripted, a big applause to Glenwood Weber.
Here, here.
And the Harris County Sheriff's Department for the groundbreaking work done that is going to resonate across the nation. We are seeing the tip of change, and the spearhead is right there. So thank you. You know, the Egyptians supposedly had a proverb: to speak the name of the dead is to make them live again. And that's very true, isn't it? And that's what every year we come together and we do when we have the Transgender Day of Remembrance. And what I would encourage you to do is to choose one of those names this year and hold it in your heart. Try to hold it all year long. Remember that person. Make them live again through your thoughts and your energies. My idea for a living memorial came about because we need something that is a legacy, that speaks to the vibrancy of the lives that were cut short, right? And it's important we have these all across the nation. I was ecstatic when Lou caught on to the idea and was like, yes, let's do this in Houston. It meant so much to me. And I want to thank you, and I want to thank everyone that has participated and everyone that has donated. It's been a wonderful journey. It's been a difficult journey at times, and scheduling and all that. Y'all know how that goes. But it's well worth it, right? And now we have a memorial that we can come to and remember, recall those things, and say them again. So now for my scripted words. So dear friends, allies, and community, today we come together to honor our transgender family who have been cut down by violence. Violence systematically nourished and socially taught as a way to cope with things that are different, beyond our individual control, or other. We find ourselves raised in a system that teaches us from a young age that we have to protect our own, and that often means in competition with others for resources and in labeling others as other or different, or as Sesame Street might have mentioned while we were growing up, which one of these is not like the other. And so we come together to honor those lives cut short out of a hatred born of ignorance because of a learned coping mechanism of violence. And in mourning we swear that this will be the last time. And that we reach out to find constructive ways to end the violence, right? To hope we can make a difference. And there is hope. But as we move into next year, that hope needs to be smart. We need to be wiser in finding ways that are more effective. As we look internationally at those who died, we see a recurring pattern of the role of privilege operating on the reporting of violence and on those on whom these acts are visited upon. We see that those with the least ownership of privilege are those whose often had lives are cut short, and that there are so many whose stories go unheard. I use the framework of privilege here because it's one that we all possess, we all share, regardless of age, creed, religion, race, physical ability, sex, and so many of the other boxes we put ourselves in. We all possess privilege. Yes, some of us have more privilege than others. And too often we do not see that privilege that we do carry with us. We don't see how it operates in our own lives. Too often we do not see that in our own othering of people, we silo ourselves off from those who might be willing to walk with us. Community is a value I've learned since coming out as a transgender woman in 2001. Community is the one thing that has been my safety net when family, friends, and institutions have failed and underperformed. It is that sense of community that I ask of you to commit to today. Use your privilege to reach out to firm the ties that make us a family. Use your resources to lift up stories of those who have not been heard before. Take courage to set aside prejudgment and clasp the hand of someone you might not normally be in solidarity with. Attending to violence as a system of oppression is not done overnight. Planting flowers in the killing field that violence grinds is not done simply. It is done through time and in community. So let us proceed together towards its deconstruction. Thank you.
Before the skies open up and we get really wet standing here, I want to say thank you to everybody for taking the time to be here and stand on this corner with us as we talk about this, as we remember those. And I challenge you all to be there Saturday night, but not only to be there in body, but to be there in spirit and to be there as we go forward and become living memorials like Daniel was talking about, and to do this and to tell our stories, to tell the stories of your friends, your neighbors. The thing is, nobody can hate us if they know who we are. And the more we talk about ourselves, our own stories, and the stories of our friends and neighbors, the less they can hate us, and the less the bias will happen, and the more we can save ourselves and save each other. So please, stop the hate speech. If you hear it, ask them to stop. If you hear it, come out either as an LGBT person, as an ally, as an advocate. Those are our biggest weapons against the rest of the world, to say, I am here. I put my pants on the same way you do every day. Please, just give me a chance, get to know me, and you will realize we're all in this together. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here. I appreciate it, and I hope to see you all again. Thank you.
Thank you, Lou.
Thank you, Alan. Katie, come on, Katie.
Spend all your time waiting for that second chance.